I've also struggled with body dysmorphia because at the time I was struggling with weight issues from a previous relationship that was like super toxic. So I had to find myself again. But it's kind of like I went from one extreme to another extreme, like overweight to wanting to be the smallest version of myself and like constantly comparing myself to these girls on Instagram. And the biggest thing about comparison, and I'm still learning this now in like my own entrepreneurial journey, is that we really cannot compare ourselves to anyone because we don't know the timeline of their journey. Like you'll be comparing your 1 year journey to someone's 10-year journey, and that is so not fair to yourself.
Welcome to another episode of the Heal and Manifest podcast. I am Cynthia Flores, your host, and today we are going to dive into holistic fitness and healing from within. Today, I have a special guest, Kathy Flores. She is a certified personal trainer and a holistic health coach. Kathy went from competitive powerlifting to overcoming chronic health struggles, and her journey has really led her to a mind body approach to fitness that really goes beyond aesthetics. So, today, what we are going to explore is healing through movement, the mental health impacts of fitness culture and the fitness industry, and some practical tips on about holistic wellness and holistic fitness. So if you are ready to redefine your healing journey or your fitness journey on your own terms, let's get into it. Kathy, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have this conversation because I've always been into fitness ever since I remember. But I do remember that starting my fitness journey, I really struggled with one, not knowing how to, if whether I was making the right movements, um, whether I was doing it right, right? There's so much information and even misinformation out there around fitness in general. And I think that there's when it comes to the fitness industry, there's also it can be quite toxic, right? So first of all, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia. I think this topic is really important because a lot of us fall into that toxicity of the fitness industry. And I'm here to tell everybody that, like, you don't have to do that. There's a better approach where you can honor your mind, body, and soul and strength train to not only look good but for longevity too, because I think that's something that the fitness industry doesn't like touch upon.
Exactly. And you know what? Before we get into that, I just want to share how I found you. I found you through TikTok. So I think so last year, 2024, December, no, November, I was in New York and so just to share a little bit of my history with fitness and like chronic pain, chronic low back pain. I started having chronic low back pain in 2018, 2019. I think that it has a lot to do with how I trained, but also the work that I do. Of course, I am a trauma therapist. I At that time I worked in community mental health. I was, supporting my Latino community, the immigrant community, and it was just a lot of trauma, compounding trauma. And to me, I didn't feel like I had the tools, the inner resources to really process that. And I think that I came to the point where I was so burned out that my body was literally screaming. And it came to the point where I couldn't even walk. I, had to get MRIs. They didn't really know what was happening. I was like in bed for like a week. I was just really struggling. And it was like they mentioned that it was something related to like herniated disc. But then throughout my journey, trying to heal my body and recover my low back pain, which was chronic, and it came a lot when I was stressed. We understand that stress, emotional, psychological stress, is going to show up psychosomatically in our bodies, pains, chronic pains, inflammation in the body. So I was struggling with that. And then throughout my journey, and then until, November when I found you, I was coming back from New York from a trip. I was walking so much, probably wasn't wearing the right shoes because I wanted to look cute and all. But clearly, and then made maybe what made a wrong movement. I was staying in different hotels. Coming back, of course, the airplane is like 6 hour ride. I had a flare up, and a flare up where I was limping. I was like, my hip was like this. Like, it was just not, I was not having it. And I was like, am I going to live with this chronic pain for the rest of my life? And I realized that a lot of people live with chronic pain, and we don't understand the impacts that that has on our mental health, on our wellness, on our longevity. And people don't really have the outer resources to figure out how to get the right supports, but also internally, right? How to better manage it. And that's where I found you. I found you on TikTok. I was just looking for a bunch of information, a bunch of videos on how to stretch, how to like release that tension, that pain, and I found your videos on mobility. And that's where I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out. I'm going to have to do whatever it takes at this point to heal this chronic pain. And I reached out, I did a consultation with you. That's where we started a 6 week program where, you worked with me to help with the mobility stretches and exercises, which, oh my gosh, I do have to say that I'm so grateful for to have found you, because right now I'm like pain free, you know? And yeah, there is a little bit of soreness. I am continuing the program. I am continuing doing other activities like Legree, which has been really helpful. But I feel like you've been really helpful, and I'm really feeling very grateful for you.
I'm so happy
S-
to hear that. Yeah,
yeah.
like I totally feel you with the chronic pain and also feeling like you're gonna have it forever because I once felt like that. And
Mhm.
I didn't even know it's not normal to be in pain or have chronic pain because other people in my family also suffer from chronic pain. So growing
Mm,
up, like my older brother always had knee issues. My mom is in chronic pain, so I thought it was normal. But I came to a point
mm,
with my chronic pain where like I just could not bend forward. And I I didn't know what to do. Like I just knew it
mm,
wasn't normal. So I went to see a physical therapist and they helped me a little bit, but physical therapy is so expensive and
yeah.
I just could not afford it anymore. So that's when I took like a massive deep dive into like posture, figuring out what was wrong with me. Because I felt like there was more to my chronic pain than just like a weak core, you know?
Mm,
And then that's when I realized all these other postural issues that are out there. So I've been able to like heal my chronic pain and also improve my posture in a way that I never even knew was possible. Like I thought posture was genetic, but it's not to a
mm.
certain degree. And like if your family has postural issues and like, if our family all lives the same lifestyle and they all have postural issues, you won't really know if it's like genetic or like lifestyle until you
Yeah.
actually do the work to fix the issues that you're feeling.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I guess I'm curious because I know that initially you mentioned outside of this conversation, you mentioned that you started your powerlifting journey, right? And that kind of shaped initially your approach to fitness. And I guess I'm curious how how did that look like versus how it looks like now, based on your experience in learning more about posture and everything that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I definitely, it's so funny because when I first started my fitness journey, I was around a bunch of men and I definitely, I was so heavily influenced by them and like they were definitely like gym broing powerlifting.
Mm,
So
mm,
just like going like full force, like not doing much mobility and core, like doing the basic stretching, but you need more than that, especially if you've had postural issues since a teenager like I did. But I didn't know that, and I just followed their lead. And I
mm,
always had the mindset of like, if they can do it, I can do it too. So I ran with that, and I didn't even know what powerlifting was until one of the guys told me, like, "Oh, you're so strong, you should do it." and I ran with it because growing up I had such anxiety of like the fear of being seen and like participating in a
Mm.
sport. So in my early 20s, I was like, you know what? I'm good at lifting. I'm just gonna do it. So I fell in love with it for like how empowered I felt. But I definitely like gym broed powerlifting, and that contributed to all of the postural. It made the postural issues worse because I already had postural issues as a teenager. So like doing it like the gym bro way was not smart. And I know there are so many people out there that do it that way, and they don't know that they're like missing all these important things to help with their powerlifting, like improve it, but also to reduce the chronic pain that they have.
Wow. And I guess I'm curious for you, what are maybe some of the toxic narratives or like, when it comes to the fitness industry that you've seen that you're like, hey, well, this wasn't quite helpful for me, looking back at it. What do you think that is?
One of them is I hear a lot of it where they say, don't follow the plan, not your mood. I feel like that's
Mm,
kind of like a double-edged sword because sometimes you do have to honor your feelings and then proceed forward. But if we're always told, like, follow the plan, not your mood, follow the plan, not your mood, there's going to be certain things that you're not really acknowledging about yourself or allowing yourself to feel. And I mean, when we're working like a 9 to 5, when do we really have time to like feel? Because we're always on the go, always on the go. So it's
mm.
one of that. And oh, pushing past the pain. I think there's like certain
Or no
I think
pain, no
there's like
gain, right? Like,
yes, that one. Yes. I think there's levels, right? Like I would say yeah, there's definitely levels to like the discomfort that you feel
Mhm,
when you're lifting. Obviously you don't want to be lifting like, oh, no, 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 this is so easy. You want to feel like a certain level of like discomfort or like,
mhm,
you're not so comfortable, but I think the no pain, no gain, super toxic. Don't do
mhm.
that. I've done it multiple times up until 2023 when I couldn't take my chronic pain anymore, and I've definitely pushed past certain like severe amounts of pain that right now I would not do that anymore.
And you know what? I was just thinking like that no pain, no gain kind of narrative. It's definitely very toxic because it really disconnects us from our body, right? It disconnects us from this mind body, as you mentioned, soul experience where we've been conditioned to kind of like hustle. We've been conditioned into this hustle culture, into just keep going, right? And that oftentimes leads to this disconnection to of like, what is it that my body is really trying to tell me? What, yeah, how am I really feeling, right? Of course, we understand that sometimes also even in the fitness industry, there's like the motivation, right? Like, don't focus so much on the motivation, which we understand that it's a mindset shift, right? Not only for the fitness, but even entrepreneurship or just navigating other things that you need to do. But specifically for this, I think that this narrative of like, don't listen to your body, you have to feel pain, like you have to get to the point where you're like dropped, and the reality is like that is not helpful because what we want to do and bringing more of the holistic approach is listen to what are the messages that our body is telling us and how do we move forward with that rather than just being disconnected, right? And I know you mentioned right now uh, the health struggles, I know you mentioned some of the challenges, the health challenges that you've experienced. How did, what challenges were these, right? I know you mentioned posture issues, but what other health struggles you had to experience and how did these impact your physical and mental health and your well-being?
Yeah, so along with the postural issues, I also had chronic migraine syndrome,
Oh.
digestive issues, eczema, and I realized that a lot of that has to do with like a disconnect between the mind, body, and soul. I've had
Mm.
to, oh, and I also had a Bartholin cyst.
What is
So
that?
conventional medicine, it's like a cyst in your vagina. It was
Okay, okay.
horrible, horrible.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that sounds very
yeah.
painful.
It was so painful. It was the worst pain, but when it pops, it's like you never had it. So I was like, damn, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did
So
these
I,
impact
mhm.
you?
Yeah, so with the chronic migraine syndrome, it definitely impacted my weightlifting because there would be some days where I would work out with the headache, which now that I look at it is crazy because it really contributes to that no pain, no gain. Like just keep going,
Mm,
work through the pain, just do your exercise. I would never do that again. When you have a headache, pause, do not go to the gym. So I was
yeah.
always pushing myself so hard. And what else was it? The digestive issues,
Hmm.
always feeling bloated, definitely made me feel super self-conscious. The eczema, and that was a part of my like nervous system regulation and also the diet that I was eating, like heavily processed diet, with like a
Oh,
lot of additives, like always on the go, never. It's kind of like the same, it's like this one archetype of like state of being where you're just always on the go. And like when we're in this constant like chase, this race, it comes with all of these things. And like now that I look at it, I'm not really surprised that I had all these issues because I was living this certain lifestyle and I had this certain state of mind. So that, and with the migraines, the reason why I ended up doing this like holistic approach to fitness is because conventional medicine never gave me the help that I needed. When it came to my chronic migraines, they said, "Okay, you have chronic migraine syndrome." And I'm like, "Yeah, I knew that already." And then so they gave me this prescription drug called Aimovig, and I had one injection, and I just felt my appetite enhance way more than it usually was. And I was like, "Oh, hell no, I do not want to gain weight," because I already struggled with my weight and
mm,
I didn't want to gain more weight. So I was like, "No, I'm not gonna do this again."
yeah.
Like instead of like trying to really allow me to understand why I get the chronic migraines, they just give me prescription. And then same thing happened with the cyst. They just
Mm,
gave me a prescription and then it almost came back again. And that was like the scariest thing because not only am I battling the chronic migraines, now I have this Bartholin cyst. So I'm like, damn, I'm just gonna be like kind of like debilitated in a way for like my whole life with all these issues. So that's when I discovered turmeric. And I was like, wow, turmeric really is such a powerful
yeah.
anti-inflammatory that the doctors never told me about. So I was like, you know what? I'm never gonna go to a doctor again. And I went to a naturopathic doctor instead.
Hmm.
And she helped me realize that like my chronic migraines were a part of like trauma, and like she introduced me to like therapy and like subconscious reprogramming and also a more like anti-inflammatory diet. So
Yes.
because I never got the help for the chronic migraines and the cysts, I was like, you know what? I need to find a different approach because this is all not making sense and it's not really working.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Oh my god, I smiled when you said turmeric because honestly, thanks for sharing this. I can remember my journey through healing more in a holistic way is I also discovered turmeric when I was having the low back pain. I was taking supplements. I was doing a ton of research. And I was like, okay, turmeric seems like it's good. I wasn't really at that point thinking about an anti inflammatory diet, but I was like, well, how can I integrate supplements that will take out, release inflammation in my body? Because if you think about it, a lot of the stress is going to inflame your body. Okay.
Yeah.
Toxic stress is a prolonged, so there's stress, normal stress that we need to feel to get through our day, right? Maybe we need to finish, we have a deadline at work or whatnot and we need to complete it, right? There's maybe some stress that will kind of push you into doing what you need to do, right? But then there is, prolonged toxic stress. And this is, evidence based. There's a ton of research on toxic stress and how it also impacts is impacted by adversity or adverse childhood experiences. Look it up. There's a lot of research on that. And with the toxic stress, that's going to create inflammation in our body. I just wanted to share, there's a research study, I think believe that Kaiser did about toxic stress and adverse childhood experiences, and it pretty much the results indicated that people that experience adverse childhood experiences, um, trauma, right, adversity in their childhood, that they are more susceptible to getting autoimmune conditions, diabetes. There's another one. So there's diabetes, autoimmune conditions, and anything that has to do with inflammation, anything that has to do with inflammation in your body, that is going to impact. Also obesity, right? That's There's a lot of studies that indicate how adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, impact our physical health, and our well-being. And sometimes as a society and culture, we don't make those connections. Why? Because nobody teaches us that there's a connection between the mind and the body and the soul, right? It's more of a holistic, we need to see ourselves in a holistic approach, understand that our environment is going to impact how we feel, what we think, our perception, right? The reality that we live in. So I wanted to share that because I go back to my own personal journey. Like I said, I discovered turmeric. I was like, okay, this is going to be helpful. But at that point, I wasn't really doing an anti inflammatory diet until very recently, September of 2024, when I was experiencing, well, so I already struggled with alopecia. That's already an autoimmune condition that started in 2016 out of nowhere. And then and I know that there were probably stressors that were happening, and I can think of a couple. But from now, September 2024, for me, I was even before that, I realized that my hair was falling out. I was feeling very, like, a lot of inflammation in my body. I was feeling bloated. I was just not sleeping well, stress. My skin was changing, fatigue, chronic fatigue. And I was like, something is wrong here. I don't feel burnout. I'm taking care of myself. I'm going to the gym. I'm doing weightlifting, right? Like doing all the necessary things. But then I realized this time around in September, I went to Brazil. I consulted with a functional medicine doctor. I did some lab tests, and she was like, "Hey, it looks like you have hypothyroidism, right? You have hypothyroidism, and we need to get you on some supplements, and of course, do more of an anti-inflammatory diet to help you with the autoimmune conditions, and also go gluten-free and dairy-free." And I was like, okay, I did it. And I started feeling better. And I think like that was when I realized, maybe I'm doing all of this wrong. Like I'm like going to the gym, I'm weightlifting, I'm like doing everything I can, but I'm not really focusing on integrating all of these different aspects, my mind, the stress. How do I reduce cortisol? How do I reduce the stressors in my environment and focus on the things that I can control to help me to a more homeostasis, and remind and tell my body that I am safe, that it's okay. I don't need to be under a lot of stress. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
I went on circles, but I wanted to share that because I don't really share much of my story, but I feel like we all have our own unique physical health struggles, and we stay silent and we keep doing the same things that we're doing, but that's not going to change. That's not going to make us change, right? That's not going to help you see yourself in a holistic way. And I'm curious for you, Kathy, how is it that you pivoted from going through this like powerlifting and changing it, like powerlifting and going to more of a holistic healing approach to your fitness?
Yeah, so I started feeling this like weird feeling that my mind and my body were like not connected. I don't know, like I just felt, I was like, I just started feeling like my mind is telling me one thing and my body is telling me another thing. So I didn't understand why. And I think it's just like one thing led to another, like from the chronic migraines, from the cyst, from the naturopathic doctor to finally experiencing therapy for the first time. And it almost felt like I was like being guided towards a new way of life and like thinking and just like being. And I guess like all the issues, all the struggles, like the health issues, the mental health issues. I also had hair loss issues. I was in a narcissistic relationship, like family trauma since I was a child. The trauma was still affecting me in my
Mm,
adulthood. I think there was just like so many things I was um, ignoring, and I
mm.
didn't know how to, I didn't have the support I needed to like face the issues I had. So all of that led me to this holistic approach and actually honoring what my body is telling me, what my mind is telling me. And it's also led me to do like nervous system work now to really tap into how I actually feel, because I learned that I actually struggle feeling what pleasure means to me. Like I don't know
Mm.
what it feels like to relax. I don't know what it feels like to like want to have fun or like do things that make me feel good. And it sounds crazy, but I think like when, like you mentioned, the adverse childhood trauma, or is it ISIS that you
Yeah,
said?
ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Hmm.
Yeah, like when we go through that, we don't really realize unless we start getting curious, like, why am I like this? Why do I do this? Why do I feel like this? Unless we tap into that curiosity, we won't really know that we're functioning out of that place of trauma. And I was functioning out of that place for a really long time until I
Mm.
started feeling like this huge disconnect between my mind and body. Like my mind was like racing, but my body's like, slow down, slow down. So that's when I started developing all of those like issues, and I just had to put a stop to it. And what really put that stop for me was the chronic back pain.
Because that's when you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, shoot, I can't walk, I can't do the things that I need
Yeah.
to do." And that's where it's like, it tells you, you need to do something. You need to slow the fuck down because and do something different, right?
Yeah.
Because our body does keep the score and our body does remember. Our body is so wise, and we're so disconnected from it. And sometimes we are so like mean to it too, right? Thinking about, we do live in a society culture that really expects perfection of our body, like the the beauty standards, like it has to look a certain way, like people put their bodies into like these crazy wild surgeries to look a certain way and like risking their life. Nothing wrong with that, no, I'm not judging that, but at the same time it's like we have to get to that point to feel good with ourselves, to honor our body, to connect back to our vessel, like what really holds us. And I guess I'm curious for you, like, I know we've when it comes to the fitness industry, as I mentioned, the beauty standards, the looking a certain way, promoting like perfection, which can obviously lead to body dysmorphia and like other like low self-confidence, low self-esteem. What are your thoughts on this issue?
So I've also struggled with body dysmorphia because at the time I was struggling with weight issues from a previous relationship that was like super toxic. So I had to
Mm,
find myself again. But it's kind of like I went from one extreme to another extreme, like overweight to wanting to be the smallest version of myself and like constantly comparing myself to these girls on Instagram. And the biggest thing about comparison, and I'm still learning this now in like my own entrepreneurial journey, is that we really cannot compare ourselves to anyone because we don't know the timeline of their journey. Like you'll be
yeah,
comparing your 1 year journey to someone's 10-year journey, and that is so not fair to yourself. So
yeah.
I always like tell myself that now. Like I constantly reminding myself, you've only been doing this. Like I've only had my business for 2 years now. So I'm like, it's just been 2 years. Like people have been doing it for 10, 15, 20, their whole life, like doing it until like just for a really long time. So I'm like, stop comparing and just focus on yourself now, how you feel. And I was definitely not doing that at all. I was just like
Mhm.
looking, I'm like, oh my God, I want to be that. I want to be that. But even when we do get that, like let's say you do achieve the goal, you're probably not even going to be happy because that's not the source of your happiness. Achieving a goal is not the source of your happiness. Like your happiness is now where you are and appreciating yourself every little step of the way to get to that journey. And I wish other people understood that. I mean, like, it's so nice to look at them and be like, wow, that's so awesome. And it's like motivating, but it's such a fine line that we cross of like motivating to, I want to be that. Like the only person you should want to be is yourself. And I think if you don't know yourself, which I also struggle with too, growing up,
Mhm.
I had my parents like tell me what to do, tell me how to dress, who I should date. So I also had to like tune into myself and realize who am I, what do I want? And it's totally okay to like feel uneasy in that.
Mm.
And I think that's the part of like growth.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're unhappy with yourself and you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you really have to like dig deep and like sit with that uncomfortable feeling of like, who am I? What makes me happy? What do I really want? Because like achieving that body is not actually what you want. And that also comes from a place of like insecurity and like ego.
100%. And you know, a lot of people experience body dysmorphia. It's not even it's like their own perceptions of their bodies based on, as you mentioned, the comparison, the seeking something that is not themselves, right? And it's like always seeking something outside of you. It almost feels like it's betraying oneself in a way, right? It's like not wanting this wholeness, right, of a being in the body that you have. And I understand that these struggles, like body, anything that had to do has to do with our body, it also has to do with trauma, because what happens with trauma and adversity, it disconnects us, is it disassociates us because we don't feel safe in it, right? So I do think that part of healing this narrative, healing through a holistic approach of even fitness, of just healing trauma, right? Healing our relationship to our body is also acceptance, right? Like cultivating radical self love, radical self acceptance, and also self forgiveness, right? um, but what do you think? How can, this holistic fitness help individuals cultivate self acceptance and accepting their relationship, healing their relationship with their bodies?
Yeah, so I would say instead of focusing so much on the outer appearance, focus on how you feel and your strength. Because I feel like once you focus on how you feel and your strength and just like your energy levels, the looks are gonna come with it. Because what is it that like you achieve a certain body type, but you don't feel good, you have low energy, it really there's really no point in like the appearance if like inside you don't feel good. So I would say set more strength goals, like cardiovascular goals. Always fuel your body to feel good. Pay attention to what foods make you feel good, what activities make you feel good. I feel like when I was powerlifting, I was just powerlifting. I wasn't doing cardio, I wasn't doing like Pilates or yoga. I wasn't really educated on all those different types of movement out there. I really limited myself. So I would say have a more like like broaden what fitness means to you. Like if you want to go play
Mm,
soccer, if you want to go play basketball, if you want to go for a walk, swimming, like there's so many different forms of like staying fit that you could do, not only just strength training and like going to the gym. So I would say that would also help with like body dysmorphia. And also don't expect so much out of yourself. I feel like expecting is just not good for like anybody. So always
mhm.
honor yourself and like congratulate yourself on like the baby steps you're making forward, because you always have to be proud that you're starting your fitness journey. Like you want more for yourself. That's awesome. And now it's time to do it from a place of like I want to better myself, but not compare myself to anybody else.
I love that. I think you bring up great points. I think that even the comparison, but also like the expectations of how our body should look, right? I'm a firm believer of like redefining fitness, redefining what feels good for you, right? I know a lot of people focus on going to the gym and weightlifting, and just because everybody's doing it, it doesn't mean that you have to do it in that way or in that form. So it's like redefining what feels good for you and doing things on your own terms, not because people are doing this amount of exercise for this amount of time and frequency and etc. It's really figuring out what feels good to your body, right? And coming back to healing your relationship with yourself, not just doing it because you have to, right? Because it's the standard, right? It's more of like, why are you doing it? I think asking yourself these questions: why do I want to do it? Is it because I want to look a certain way, or because I want to feel a certain way? I want to appreciate and really hold a lot of gratitude for what my body's doing in this moment, which is walking, which is like drinking water, breathing, like being able to stretch, being able to move my body a certain way. I do think that connecting with gratitude and that radical self acceptance is really healing and powerful, and giving ourselves permission. Okay, so giving ourselves permission is a big theme for me, and I'm like, like sprinkling this out there, this message, because giving yourself permission can mean so many things. And that can mean like redefining and doing things in your own terms, right? Giving yourself permission to redefine fitness, to do things in ways that feel good, that could reconnect you back to joy, to pleasure, not just because you're like kind of like an operating on survival and like always on to go, on the go on this hustle culture. So yes, I highly believe in that. What other maybe things that you can provide in terms of tips on how to incorporate specific, like holistic practices in people's, fitness journey?
So definitely what you said about knowing your why. I think if you ask yourself, why did I start my fitness journey? And you say, because I want to look like her. Ask yourself why again, and keep asking why until you find the real reason why you're starting your fitness journey. And if there's no other reason to start your fitness journey other than looking like somebody else, maybe you shouldn't start your fitness journey, because maybe now is not really your time to start your fitness journey, you know? And also connecting to your breath. Breath work is not only so nourishing for your body, your posture, but it's also so grounding. And one big tip to know if you're pushing yourself too much in the gym is if you're holding your breath, if you can't breathe during your exercise, you're going way too heavy and that movement is just way too challenging for you. And I wish I would have known that in the beginning, because nobody really talks about breathing, engaging your
Mm.
core during exercise. I think like we're stuck in that whole like push, 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 no pain, no gain. And when we're in that mindset, we don't connect to our breath. We're just like pushing, pushing, pushing. And it's just like, it's counterproductive to actually having a good workout, not a workout where you feel like just beat down after your workout and you just want to take a nap, because you shouldn't want to like you shouldn't feel so exhausted after your workout. You want to feel like energized. And the only way to do that is to know your limits in the gym. And I think connecting to your breath would really help you know your limits. And also, when you're really stressed out, we tend to like breathe through our chest, like because we're kind of like
Mm.
hyperventilating when we're stressed. So
Mm.
a good way to know is if you're really stressed is if you do start chest breathing, or if you're a chronic chest breather, you've also been like in a chronic state of stress.
That's a great indicator to kind of to help like our listeners really think about how connected they are to their needs, right? Because not everyone is really connected to what their body needs in the moment, and that's how people get also injuries, right? Because they're pushing themselves outside of their limit. So I think that's, connecting back to what your body needs, to your breath, and figuring out, hey, am I really pushing myself? Or, I think there's also, it's okay to challenge yourself, but also knowing what the limit is, right?
1,000%, because especially as a ex-competitive powerlifter, I was pushing past my limits. Like it's
Mm.
crazy. And now I'm learning how to really tone it down to actually connect with what my body needs.
Mhm.
And it feels like liberating, because now I'm not in this chase of like pushing,
Mm.
pushing, pushing. Like I know when to stop, and I have more awareness and like control of like my mind and where my thoughts are coming from and how I actually
Mhm.
feel and what makes me feel good and grounded. And I feel more at ease now that I'm not like
Mhm.
chasing an image, like chasing a body image, or like trying to keep up with like the Joneses, aka society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Kathy, this has been such a lovely conversation. For me, it's definitely something that I really needed years ago. And I really hope that our listeners take away all of these things that we're sharing and they really apply it and integrate it into their lives and really help them think and identify where they're at in their fitness journey or and even where they want to go, where do they want to head into when it comes to integrating more of a holistic approach, right? Thank you so much. I would like you to share how can people work with you. Of course, I found you on TikTok. I love your videos. I feel like they were really helpful and then you and I started working together. But how can people work with you and where can they find you?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I feel
Mm,
like I needed this conversation back when I first started too, just to really connect with like my mind, body, and soul and what that disconnect looks like. And everyone can find me on all my social media handles are the same, KWEEN, Kathy with a K. So Queen Kathy on all
mm.
social media.
Okay. And what offerings are you providing now?
Yeah, so I offer postural help, connecting with your breath, strengthening your core, fixing issues like flared ribs. I also do nutrition guidance, helping people lose weight, body recomposition, build muscle in a way that's sustainable. So all of
Mm,
my approaches are sustainable. There's no like dramatic, life-changing thing that it's like this short-term result and doesn't last a long time. I like to work with my clients where they build habits that they can take for the rest of their lives to really live like this holistic fitness approach forever, because I think that's what you do your fitness journey for, so that you can
yeah.
be fit until you're 80, 70. So that's my approach. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And what is one key takeaway you want listeners to remember besides all of the amazing information we talked about that you want them to remember and take on their journey?
Always do what's best for you. Never neglect certain parts of yourself, because every part of yourself needs that attention.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you for everyone that listened to this episode. Feel free to check out the other episodes, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.